So I found this doctor that took a little bit more of a holistic approach to things. Went in and saw him. He asked me a whole bunch of different questions, had me fill out like this toxicity questionnaire. Lots of like 3-page questionnaire. So it was like talking about like headaches, feeling bloated, fatigue, tired, all that stuff. So my score on that first one, I want to say was like 120 or something. Like it was ridiculous. And then after that, he told me that he thought I had what's called leaky gut syndrome. My understanding of leaky gut syndrome is basically like toxins are releasing into my bloodstream from my gut. But if say that happened after I just had something like watermelon, now all of a sudden my body was blaming the watermelon for it. It thought that the watermelon was causing those toxins to move into my bloodstream. So then all of a sudden I developed this food sensitivity to watermelon, and next time I have watermelon, my body's kind of like going on the attack right away. So he wanted me to get like a food sensitivity test so I can see like what foods that I was sensitive to. And there was quite a few. Watermelon actually happens to be the one that I was most sensitive to, which always blows my mind. I'm like, who's allergic to watermelon or sensitive to watermelon? But watermelon was my top one, but I also had things like pineapple, gluten, I want to say eggs. It was like probably like 20 different things. And then it kind of had it listed as like what you were least sensitive to up to like what you were most sensitive to. And then I went on what's called an elimination diet. So basically what I did is I eliminated all those foods that I had sensitivities to. And kind of the goal to that is, well, and on top of that, I could only eat functional food. So basically, if it didn't serve my body a purpose and like the overall functioning of my body, it would not go into my body. So it was this pretty strict diet for 3 months, but then the goal was that my insides would repair themselves, and then I could slowly start to reintroduce some of those food sensitivities, ultimately with no problems. I was able to reintroduce just about everything without issues, but it allowed my insides to repair themselves, and then I could get better results overall because I was functioning properly. So that is kind of a big thing that caught my eye with Hannah and Jonah is they take more of a holistic approach. They're trying to actually get in and see, let's get you functioning properly and looking at things like sleep and stress and gut and all these things that can like really hinder your results. So for some people, I've known a handful of people that have been doing this for a really long time and are not getting the results. And so it might be time to look deeper into things. You might need to fix some of the insides so that way you can start getting better results. So for me, that's where I started out. Like I said, I did that elimination diet for 3 months, and it made a huge difference for me. When I went back and I did that toxicity questionnaire again, my score dropped to about 60. And one thing that I really like, and my favorite question to ask people when they are starting out with, or like when they've got their health and fitness in line, is how do you feel? And a lot of times it's like you don't even realize you feel bad until you start to feel good. And that's how it was for me. I didn't even realize like how bad I was actually feeling because it had just become normal. It was just how I lived my life. And when I could actually experience that, like I don't have to have headaches every day. I don't always have to feel bloated. I don't always have to feel tired. And that's ultimately what led me into training. When I saw like the difference that it made in my overall life, like obviously losing weight and physique and stuff is great, but how it made me feel was even better. So that's why I wanted to become a trainer and be able to help people. And so like I said, when I saw them, I was like, we have got to get in on that. So on that, I'm going to turn it over to them. And
great.
Awesome.
Thanks, Misty. Yeah, and thank you all so much for being here today. We've done a couple other nutrition presentations before, and we just obviously just geek out about this stuff. We really love it. It's our passion for sure. And so give you a little bit of background on me. Reminder, my name's Hannah. I'm from Colorado here. I've known Misty for a while. My Aunt Gina's worked out at the CrossFit gym here for years, so excited to be back. A little bit on why I'm so passionate about nutrition and fitness is, if you saw my intro on the Facebook group, a few years ago, I actually had a pretty intense surgery to remove a grapefruit-sized, non-cancerous tumor from my left ovary. And it was just such a traumatic experience in my life because the causes were unknown, but there's more and more studies coming out showing the effects of stored stress on the body and how that can manifest physically between like PCOS and gut health issues, like how stress will become manifested within the body. So that's just what we think right now. But the whole experience was just absolutely traumatic. Like I went to this doctor and he was like, the surgeon was just kind of brushing it over. He was saying like, you know, this is a pretty routine surgery. Like you should be able to go back to work within a few days. No big deal. And I was like, okay. So I went into it like, this is no big deal. Like I'll just, you know, cut it out and then I'll be off on my way. And so I go to the day of the surgery, and I was supposed to just be in and out one day. And I go and, you know, they do it, and right away when I wake up from the anesthesia, just such an intense amount of pain. I was crying, I was sobbing, even on painkillers, I was just sobbing. It was just so painful, and it's like, I think, you know, your body remembers trauma too, and so just that whole experience. And then after that, they were just like, all right, give her some extra painkillers and send her home. And so we did that, and I go home, and a few hours later, the painkillers start to wear off, the pain starts coming back really bad. And I stand up, and from where they did the incision in my belly button, like, they would just gush out blood onto the floor, and I was like, you know, this isn't right. And I don't mean to get gory or anything, but this is just the trauma I experienced, and how I really made the connection to where if you don't have your health, and if you are a slave to doctors and drugs and hospitals, you're not going to have anything else in life. Like, if you don't have your health, you truly do not have anything else in life. And I also had some past, like with my parents too. Both my mom died of heart disease when I was 8 years old. My dad he was literally like minutes away from death. He had 100% artery blockage in his artery, having a heart attack. And they saved him just in time too. So just throughout my whole life, I've witnessed the true effects of what it is to not have your health. And so while looking great is really awesome, and having abs and you know, having all the aesthetics is really great, for me, I'm in this really for the health and for the nutrition, because it gives you your life back. And, you know, and like, you know, I know a lot of you here might be parents, and you have children and families that depend on you. And so you're doing through all of this really isn't just for you, it's for everyone else around you too. And so anyway, after that whole traumatic experience, I swore to myself, like, I will never depend on drugs. I will never depend on hospitals. As grateful as I am for those doctors, they truly did save me. It just was like, it's never something I want to have to do. If I can avoid a hospital, I absolutely will. And so that was kind of my background with health and nutrition. I actually got my degree in college in business. But after that, you know, Joan and I started dating in college. We met in college, and he was exercise and sports science. And so we were around the sport and fitness around for a while. And then after we graduated, Jonah here, he'll tell you a story, but he got his personal training certification. And so we were just kind of around the whole area. And then I decided, and then he got his nutrition coaching certification. I was like, you know what? That looks awesome. Like, I love learning about nutrition. So I got my certification as well. And just been working with a few clients one-on-one, and it's just absolutely, like, I love it. And there's everything can be treated with nutrition, between like the most intense diseases to just having more energy throughout the day, feeling better, and having more confidence. Like, all of that comes through what you put in your body, and how you move your body too. So that's a little bit of background on me and why I'm here.
Awesome. Well, I personally haven't had any super serious health issues, and don't plan on it anytime soon. But nutrition and fitness has been a part of my life for as long as I can remember. I played football ever since I was 8 years old, played it all the way through college. But growing up, I grew up in a very toxic environment, not very fun, very low quality food, right? Could only afford things that were in packages, cosmic brownies, cupcakes, all the great things. I would eat like a pound of Reese's every day. It was pretty ridiculous. Yeah, it was nuts. But for years, I had no idea what I was doing to my body at all. So I carried that habit all the way through college, and I actually was on the other spectrum for a very long time. I had a hard time gaining weight, and I know it's a very weird thing, but it's still, I was a defensive lineman. I was 185 pounds, and I was a Division II defensive end. I was like, hey, I'm gonna come out here and play with these 300-pound dudes. I got tossed around a lot, but I always questioned how powerful food actually was. Like, if I couldn't put on the weight, I'll be fine. I don't need to eat as much as I think I do, blah, 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 blah. That was a super hard struggle for me in college until I actually started dating her, and she started feeding me a lot because I asked her to, right? And so then I actually put on 35 pounds in 3 months. Then I was like, holy crap, so maybe food does have that has a say in what our body does and how we want it to react. Is anyone here offended if I cuss? Thank fucking God. 'Cause I have no filter. So anyway, I go through that season. I put on 35 pounds, like dirty way, eating 6 times a day, basically McDonald's, Sonic, Pizza Hut, and then 3 meals that she was feeding me on top of all that. And I gained the weight. I felt good. I was really strong, but then I lost my performance in my sport. I was incredibly slow and just so frustrating. Then I tricked myself into thinking I had a decently good college career that I could go try and be a professional in the Canadian Football League, and that didn't go anywhere. But I gained another 30 pounds. This one was a little bit more clean, but we were doing long distance, and I was living with my grandparents, and grandmother's cooking. Yeah, she fed me really well as well. But all that understanding, like it clicked for me. For 10 plus years, I was like, food is just food. Like, I don't need to worry about it. And then I started actually applying food to fit my performance goals. I saw that I didn't know at the time, but I did it the wrong way. So if you're only chasing weight, you're gonna miss out on everything else that you're actually striving for. You know, and we're gonna get into it how weight loss can go into effect. Like, if you're only focused on the number on the scale, that can be so very detrimental to your mental state. But after that, after I finally hung up the cleats, and my frustrating career came to an end, I took a very hard look at myself in the mirror and said, why the fuck did I suck so bad at everything? Didn't perform well like I wanted to on the field, didn't do what I wanted, didn't look like an athlete anymore. I had gained 55 pounds, and it was just staying there. Now that I didn't have the activity anymore. It's like, what is going on? And I had chronic back pain, chronic knee pain. I hated exercise. I hated nutrition. I hated it all. And I took a complete break until I was like, all right, you know what? I'm gonna figure this out. Then I got my personal training certification. I went through a corrective exercise with my manager at the time, and she helped me correct my movement patterns. I was like, back pain gone, knee pain gone. I was like, holy crap! Like, this is what it's like to move without pain. Cool, I love that. And then as I started understanding that and learning about aesthetic goals and longevity goals and performance goals that your food can tie into, I was like, I need to match this knowledge I'm getting from fitness to nutrition. So I got my nutrition certification, and I started applying that to myself. And we got married last year, so I wanted to get as lean as I possibly could. After going through 2 dirty bulks from college and my career path, and I actually took my food seriously again, followed the macro plan, and I got incredibly lean. But a fun thing we'll talk about later is the effects of getting too lean, and what Misty was talking about before, how about stress, fatigue, bloating, all those are biofeedback markers our body uses to talk about. But anyway, got too lean, had some health issues, but because of all that knowledge, because I've been on both spectrums of not being able to gain weight to losing weight to changing my physique, I've realized that we are way more powerful than we actually are. Our what's the word I'm looking for? But our beliefs around food aren't always as scary or hard as they make them seem. My entire goal is to make this process very easy for you, very easy to understand, very applicable. I want each and every one of you to walk away with something that you can start applying to whatever goal it is that you have. So this matters to me because I want to give you guys control of your own lives. We're not slaves to getting old, growing fat, or not being able to gain weight or lose weight, or being able to sacrifice performance for anything, you know. I want to be able to integrate this into your life. So with that being said, I want to tailor this to you. I could talk all day. I could be Google right now, but I don't like that. I don't like lecturing people. I hated that in college. The only reason I stayed there was because of football. But I would like each of you, or if you have a question that you wanted to touch on that you're curious about, ask me right now. We'll write it on the board, and then we'll go through it together. And then I have a brief metabolic understanding to help you guys kind of see how the big picture works when it comes to food and applying it to whatever goal you have. But right now, any questions that is popping in anyone's head right now? There are no dumb questions, I promise.
And this is a common one we had on the Facebook group is like, especially through like menopause and everything, how to balance your hormones through your nutrition, which is huge. So I'm going to write that one out preemptively. And did you have one?
So we've done quite a few like gym challenges where you do, it's like 6 weeks, 8 weeks of eating healthy,
Yeah.
working out a lot. So why is it so much harder to maintain when you've reached your goals and to do this cyclical gaining weight, losing weight, gaining weight, losing weight?
Okay.
Like, why does weight fluctuate, you
So
mean?
why does it, maybe it's a personal thing, like why do you find it so much harder to maintain when you've reached your goals than to get to those goals?
Okay, so
Gotcha.
how to maintain results. So that's the, we'll get into that. I like that. We don't want to start over. We don't like that.
3 years, you've done it.
Anything else? Just covering everyone's ideas?
Yeah, hormones.
Hormones is huge.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Big thing. We've all
Yeah.
hit about that.
well, hormones is how we gain or lose weight anyway. It's all a signal that is being sent to our body. So we'll get into that. So it's super easy. If questions do pop up, tell me to shut the hell up and I'll answer it. But without further ado, shall we?
Yeah.
All right, so I want to give you a brief understanding of how our body works with calories. All right, and then we'll get into how this affects balancing hormones and maintaining your goals once you get there. All right, so now I have a question for you. What is a calorie? Energy? Thank you. The last time I gave a presentation, no one knew that answer.
It was crickets.
Yeah, it was very interesting. But yes, a calorie is simply a form of energy, right? There's no good or bad calories, right? There are more nutrient dense and less nutrient dense foods. So I want to get that out of the way right now. If you eat a piece of candy, you're not a bad person. All right. Overall, calories, there's the energy balance equation, right? Calories in versus calories out. If you burn less than you eat, or if you burn less than you eat, you gain weight. If you eat less than you burn, you lose weight. Simple, right? In theory. On paper, yes, very, very easy. But then it kind of goes into the basics that you have to have in line before that equation actually works. All right, and so we have a method that we've developed through our holistic approach towards health and fitness and nutrition, and it's the do your reps method. All right, R is the rebuild your metabolism phase. This is the basics. This is your foundation. If you do not have these, you can't skip on to 2 and 3, because I mean, if you're building your foundation on a stack of cards, it's gonna fall over real quick. All right, so E is when you actually execute a diet phase or whatever you're pursuing in that goal. All right, so this is where we actually see the results that we want to do. So like in the challenge you did, like 6 weeks, eat clean and exercise a lot, right? That's the execution phase, but a lot of us haven't gone through that rebuilding phase. That's why maintaining becomes a little bit harder, because after we stop doing that eat clean, that extreme exercise or that incredibly clean diet, we go right back to what we were doing to get us there in the first place. And then the last one is permanence, permanent lifestyle integration. So this is where we want to maintain the results that we've been able to achieve. All right, so for my own example, my first ever, I've gone through 2 bulks, and I've always had a aesthetic.
What a bulk is.
Huh? Okay, a bulk is where you eat in a caloric surplus. You're intentionally eating more calories than you're burning to
Grow muscle.
build muscle. You don't need to be in a very high caloric surplus to do that. Like anywhere between 100 and 400 calories is actually very anabolic, allows you to build muscle, but you have to be sending a very loud signal to store that as muscle instead of body fat. So that was in my recovery phase. I was actually learning about food and building my metabolism, training the way I wanted to. Then I wanted to lean out. Then I went into the execution phase, where I went into a purposeful caloric deficit. I kept protein high, so that because I'm limiting my energy instead of losing my muscle mass, I kept my protein high, so that protein storage was a priority. So then I held that for 4 months. And then, without this part, I would have gone back to where I was. So permanent lifestyle integration is where you understand how much protein you need on a daily basis to maintain a certain muscle mass, how much activity you want to maintain to keep where you're at. There's going to be a slight weight gain after you're coming out of a caloric deficit, but this is kind of where you take what you learn and kind of go intuitively into that. But everyone's is super different. So I'm not as lean as I used to be, but I still have good. I'm thinking about 15% body fat right now. That's just a quick example of how it works. All right.
And it's all for the sake of metabolism building, because like while hormones control your metabolism is ultimately what controls fat loss and weight loss and weight gain. And so this whole thing in this recovery phase, I like what Missy says, like we really focus on healing your insides, because if you have lifestyle factors like really high stress, really crappy sleep, you are going to not even going to be able to think about trying to lose weight until you're able to recover and let your body know it is now safe and it is now time to lose weight. And that can take, it really depends on the person how long each one of these phases lasts. Some people it can only take about a month or two. Some people it has to take an entire year. It really depends on dieting history. Like we'll get into like why the negative effects of like yo-yo dieting are. Does anyone know what that term means? Yeah. Do you want to explain what yo-yo dieting is?
We would do it when we go into like these really extreme diets.
Mm-hmm.
So the last gym we were at, we did a challenge where you were eating basically no carbs for 6-8 weeks, something like that. So incredibly restrictive, and you get to this point where you're like, I can't maintain. You're like, I can't maintain this. So as soon as we got off this diet, we yo-yoed. So we'd go back to our old habits. We'd start eating rice. We'd start eating pastas. Weight would once again climb and skyrocket, and we'd actually get heavier than we were before. And then we do another challenge with the same gym, same restrictive diet, lose that weight.
Yep. 100% accurate. Yeah, it's when you're like either restrict a certain macronutrient like a carbohydrate, or you restrict calories so severely, and then your body is like the alarm system goes off. It's like, what is happening? What was that?
It's so strict.
that you can't maintain it.
Exactly, and you can't maintain it because guess what? We don't live in hunter-gatherer days anymore, guys. We have to adapt to today's crazy lifestyle, and there's always going to be temptation. There's always going to be barbecues and birthday parties and kids French fries, and so we have to be able to integrate that into our lifestyle. And when yo-yo dieting is when you're so extreme, and like we've met with people who haven't eaten more than 1,200 calories a day. And if you don't know what that is, that's very, very, very little. That's like practically starvation, and that is telling the metabolism like food is scarce. Hold on to body fat. We need to maintain through this fast in order to survive. So it's going to tell the body to lose weight. So just things like that, and that's why the recovery phase is the first phase, and why it's so very important, because we need to make sure your body's insides are healthy enough to be able to lose weight. And in order to do that, what do we do?
In order to do that, there's essentially 4 to 5 pillars, depending on how much recovery you need. All right, the first one is sleep. You can't change your body if you're not sleeping very much. And most of my clients I work with are sleeping anywhere between 3 to 5 hours a night, which is, dear God, right. And they say, oh, I just drink a bunch of caffeine, and then they're stressing out their adrenals even more. Yeah.
Well, that's him. He sleeps like 4 hours.
So you're
He has like 3 rock stars.
Oh my gosh.
So what is essentially happening when we're constantly restricting sleep is we're not really allowing our body to actually get into deep or REM sleep, is where most of our hormone production and recovery actually comes from. So if you're like me, and you think that more exercise equals faster results, and you're not ever recovering from that, like with enough sleep, you're not allowing your body to start producing the actual hormones that are going to start allowing your body to change and adapt the way you would see it. I think it's 25% of the night is in REM or deep sleep, and that's where we see the most benefit. So if you're not giving yourself enough to get that 7, 8, 9 hour window, it's incredibly hard for your body to, well, actually, you're putting a huge stress on your body that's going to halt any progress that you may have. And then that's going to lead to other forms of biofeedback that include fatigue, chronic inflammation, but we'll get to a little bit more of those. But sleep is super important. Stress. What's the difference between being chased by a saber-toothed tiger and being cut off in traffic? Huh? Nothing.
I heard what you can control.
What you can, yeah, that's a good answer. But to your body, there's not a difference. It's all the same stress. So, like it or not, our brains may be these evolved, amazing beings that we can think and contemplate ideas. Our bodies are still back in times when we're making tools out of sticks and hunting animals and doing all the crazy things that we needed to do to survive. We don't do those anymore. Food is delivered to our door, already made. We don't have to do anything. We don't have to take the time to exercise to go out and get that food. So, that being said, all stress is the same to our body. So if we're chronically stressed all the time, undersleeping, we're getting angry at Karen who cut us off. I'm sorry if any of you named Karen. We're annoyed with our coworkers. We're annoyed with our personal trainer because they kicked our ass today. All these things that can build up without any form of stress reduction. Does anyone know what cortisol is?
Stress hormone.
Stress hormone, yes. But it's not because it's actually helping us recover from the stress. Cortisol isn't the devil. It's actually my favorite hormone because it's what allows us to elicit change and adaptations to get better at certain things. But if it's chronically being produced, it actually becomes catabolic, turning off. It eats and tears down muscle and allows more body fat storage because it doesn't help regulate your blood anymore. So it helps regulate your blood sugar. So if cortisol gets turned off, then we have a very issue with high insulin levels. Then we become insulin resistant. Diabetes and obesity can start climbing because of it. So that being said, stress is an amazing hormone, but we don't need to be stressed all the time. Working out is a stress on your body. You need to recover from your workouts. Overtraining is a stress on your body. Don't work out 6 days a week. Please don't. Especially if you're worried about your hormones and you're like working out 6-7 days a week, you need to chill out. All right? Calories. So, who's restricted their calories because they saw the scale number go up? Raise your hand. How long? Just stay there? Right? Because we're scared to see the scale go up again. So we're like, okay, eat less, move more, scale will go down. Right? Not always. What we do when we start restricting our calories, think of your metabolism as a campfire. You throw wood on the fire, it grows, right? You take wood off the fire, it shrinks. So what you are doing when you constantly restrict your calories is you're telling your metabolism to adapt to that stimulus. All right, this is where metabolic adaptation goes. So if you go from a high caloric intake to a low caloric intake, you'll probably see a little bit of weight loss. But if you stay there for a long time, then your body's gonna say, all right, your metabolism was up here, now you're eating this much, it's gonna match that stimulus. So your new caloric intake, say we'll call it 1,200 calories because it's low. To lose more weight, you have to eat even less than that. And then lose more weight, you have to eat even less than that. Then you stop eating, and then you're like, well, all right, I'm gonna stop eating to see the scale go down, I'm gonna start fasting. And then you don't see the scale go any further because your body is now in starvation mode. This is why body fat is actually super important, because when we went with long periods of time without food back in hunter-gatherer days, it made sure that we wouldn't die, right? Our body's number one job is to keep us alive. So, that being said, we want to rebuild your metabolism by eating as many calories as we're burning in a day. This is what is called caloric maintenance. This is gonna help rebuild that fire. But not just any calories, right? Because you could eat McDonald's and Sonic and Pizza Hut all the time. And yeah, you would get as much calories as you want, but those are very nutrient void foods, processed foods. So processed and unprocessed is usually, it's very simple. If you get something in a bag, box, or wrapper that's processed, right? Processed sugar, easy to metabolize, but easily stored as fat in our body, not very nutrient dense. So another stress on our body is not getting that many micronutrients from whole natural foods. So, not saying that you can't eat processed foods ever again, but to understand that having a balance to that, and when you're rebuilding your metabolism, is super, super important. So a little sacrifice of eating 3 to 4 meals a day, right? Of whole veggies, good protein, complex carbohydrates like rice, quinoa, potatoes, sweet potatoes, and beans are super, super powerful because they're so full of micronutrients. It's gonna help rebuild your metabolism and help those insides feel a little bit better, all right? Exercise, I already kind of went over that one. You want to exercise at least moderately 3 to 5 times a week, whatever isn't adding more stress to like super amounts of stress to your body, right? So I love CrossFit. I love how it built a strong community around exercise. All that shit they do, and if any of you do CrossFit, you're crazy. You're nuts. But it's awesome. It works for a lot of people. It builds a lot of camaraderie. But realizing that if you're not recovering, you're causing more harm than good. All right. So don't overstress your body. Start to find that happy medium. All right. Reducing inflammation. Okay. So going back to Misty, when she talked about her gut health and she started understanding that certain foods are making her intolerant, she had this leaky gut syndrome. All right. That food particles that are leaking through her gut lining and and her body would see that as a foreign invader and start attacking, so she became intolerant to it, right? Another issue that's happening is those food particles are now, your body is trying to attack them in your bloodstream. And that attack, what the hell is that sound?
I think it's a go.
Wow. Anyway, when those food particles are in our bloodstream, our body is going to start attacking it wherever it's hiding. So this is going to increase your inflammation. So have we heard of chronic inflammation in our body? This is from stress. This is from leaky gut. This is what inflammation literally means to set on fire. So if your body is chronically inflamed, right, that cortisol response is happening, your body's trying to fight the infections. Again, you have that same cortisol response, it's going to eventually turn off and stop. Inflammation is super necessary because it helps us fight infections, right? But it becomes dangerous if it doesn't ever get improved on. So,
real quick, does anyone know what autoimmune is? Anyone?
yes.
Yeah, so it's when the inflammation becomes chronic and your body will literally like eat itself, eat itself alive essentially, because it thinks it's always on constant stress. Your hormones are so way off. So that's when you develop an autoimmune disease, which, what are some examples of autoimmune?
There's hyper and hypothyroidism, to either have a too fast metabolism or too slow metabolism. There's Graves' disease and, I can't remember the other one, Hashimoto's, which is actually trying to attack and destroy your thyroid gland, which controls your
So if the inflammation just like doesn't ever get taken care of, your body will literally attack itself, and it's very hard to reverse autoimmune. It's not impossible, but it's very hard to reverse that.
It's simple. You just have to be very consistent and be okay with not seeing progress for a while. But we'll get to that later. No, last one. Huh?
Yeah.
What?
Just keep going.
Okay. Last one, and I was kind of talking about it, is your gut health. All right. Does anyone know, like, what your microbiome is? Okay. There is good and bad gut bacteria in our stomachs. All right. So, biofeedback is how our body communicates to us to say, hey, this isn't working well. Hey, something's actually really wrong. So this could be headaches, this could be bloating, this could be indigestion, this could be diarrhea, constipation, anything that makes you uncomfortable that we as a society have just accepted. Like, oh, you get old, that's what happens, horse shit. That is all red flags that something is going on, okay? So when it comes to gut health, if you have chronic bloating and you have like inconsistent bowel movements all the time, there is something incredibly wrong with your gut health. And it could be a yeast overgrowth, or just a bad gut bacteria overgrowth, which we can't have good gut bacteria without the bad. So I don't want you to think that they're like we want to get rid of them all, but it's the ratio that we want to start improving. Okay, so how do we feed the bad gut bacteria? We eat those processed foods all the time. Sugar. Oh, they love sugar. Actually, any inflammatory foods, the bad bacteria thrives on, because you don't digest them well. They stay in the stomach longer, and then the bad bacteria thrives, and this is where bloating comes from, and all the indigestion issues that make us feel uncomfortable and gross after we eat something, right? And we're not really aware of that all the time, because we can confuse any form of indigestion as feeling full. But if a meal feels like a rock in your stomach, that's not satisfying. That's just it's just not moving. And we want to finish a meal like when we feel 80% full, and we want to feel satisfied. We don't want to feel sluggish or gross after that. So paying attention to those signals is going to be super beneficial. And how you rebuild the gut health, the gut microbiome to feed those good bacteria, is through eating 3 to 4 servings of vegetables a day. Probiotic supplements help with that if you're someone who doesn't like vegetables. Pre and probiotics. So prebiotics allow good gut bacteria to live longer in our stomach. Probiotics are the colonizing bacteria that help our good bacteria thrive. And these are any fermented foods like kimchi, pickles, sauerkrauts, kombucha, and having 2 to 3 servings of that per week is super, super beneficial as long as you're having prebiotics daily to feed that bacteria. So that's what all goes into recovery. You're building your metabolism. This is the basic stuff. Very, very basic. So if you don't have any of these in line, your hormones aren't going to work well. They're not going to balance themselves out because you're undersleeping, because you're chronically stressed. Like you're gonna turn off metabolic function. All right. Any questions on that so far?
What about oversleeping?
Oversleeping. So what's oversleeping? So you're sleeping.
9 to 10 hours, you know?
Okay, that could also be a form of biofeedback.
Well, yeah, let me ask you this. Like, do you feel sluggish still after sleeping
Yeah.
super long? Okay,
Yeah.
so that's a sign that there is oversleeping. Yeah, oversleeping, because like some people, like I personally love 9 hours of sleep, and that's a little bit higher than most people, but then I feel great after. I feel energized, but it's when you're waking up sluggish, then you know you have an issue. Yeah, so like finding a good balance, like maybe cutting it back at first by 30 minutes and then by like an extra 25, you know, and just like slowly cutting it back, because that's a big sign that's like, okay, well now my body's being too sluggish. Yeah.
And that's another sign to start looking at other factors, like what's your stress level like? Is your body trying to overcompensate with getting extra sleep, and you're not getting restful sleep? You're just your body's trying to recover, but it's still not getting into that full-on REM and deep state. So that's a sign. Any abnormality like that is a sign from your body to start paying attention to certain other parts of your areas.
Yeah. Any other questions on the recovery phase? Now we can go on to execution, right?
Yes, we could. So ultimately, just to briefly recap, to go over balancing hormones, lifestyle adjustments first. Okay. Hormone replacement therapy, HRT, is a last resort, especially if someone is going through premenopause and menopause. Reduce stress as much as possible. Start getting outside daily, increasing your non-processed food as much as possible to help your body start working for you as opposed to against it. And if you have any of these chronic bloating or really any food indigestions, the 3 problem foods I want you to start looking at are dairy, gluten, and sugar. Not because they're like the devil, but if you don't digest them well, they're the devil to you. Okay? So for me, eating pizza and drinking milk his entire life and only finding out that last year he's dairy intolerant is a major fine. All right? So just start paying attention to stuff like that.
Yeah, and so, but yeah, I agree. Before we move on, balancing hormones is really going to be found in the recovery stage, and that's why this stage is so important. That's why it's really important to take your time in this stage, because, well, first of all, let me ask, who knows all 3 of the macronutrients? Carbs, fat, and protein. Yeah. So those are all 3 of the macronutrients. That makes up all of our food. Between a donut, between an apple, it's all made up of different macronutrients, and each of those macronutrients is going to have a different effect on the body. So typically we like to demonize carbs, right? Like everyone's heard of low carb and keto. We think carbs make us fat, when that's not inherently true. If you do restrict carbs, it does produce what's known as ketones, and that does, essentially burn fat. Not very sustainable, but that doesn't mean that carbs are just absolutely the devil, especially for anyone doing CrossFit or like a high performance, like boot camp and everything.
You need carbs.
Carbs are going to be your best friend. Like they're going to fuel your body. Like they're the most efficient source of fuel for your body. So it'll just take it and run. I know him and I will have like chocolate covered almonds before a workout, and then a little bit like
Honey.
afterward too. Like the personal trainers at the gym would have like Rice Krispie treats after workout and everything. So it's not that carbs are bad. It's just another fuel source, and it's just a different effect on what you're trying to do on your body. As far as balancing hormones, one of the macronutrients that's going to be super important for your body is fat, and healthy fat at that. And so who knows an example of healthy fats? Just list them out. Avocado. Sounds like the number one.
That's one.
It's like avocado. Any others? Salmon. Yeah. Yeah.
Which one? Yes.
Yeah, those are all good, like the good healthy fats like olive oil, coconut oil, avocados, chia seeds, there's some nuts.
Steak.
That's more protein, but it does have like a little
It has
fat too.
It has fat.
Yeah.
And it's really good.
But I mean,
fat.
typically like animal fat would be secondary to healthier pure fats. But so you're adopting like a diet of keeping track of certain macronutrients level. If you are feeling like, especially in like pre-menopause, in menopause and post-menopause, like you're going to want to have a diet consistently higher in fat. It's hard to say exactly what levels because it really depends on the person, it depends on age, gender, and weight. So as to like specifically how much fat you should eat, but typically it'll be around like
25 to 35%.
Yeah, 35%.
Of your total calories. Has anyone tracked macros before? Has anyone never tracked macros before? Only a couple. Okay. It's not as scary as it sounds, I promise. It's like anything. Once you start practicing, you get used to it. But like Hannah said, it's individual to every person. How much calories you should be eating in a day is entirely dependent on how much you weigh, how old you are, your gender, your activity levels, and missing one?
Weight.
Did I say weight? Yeah, something along those lines. Everyone's super different. So based on that, again, since I know my numbers better than anyone else, I burn roughly 3,000 calories in a day. And that's not from me from moving. This is understanding how our body burns calories through our basal metabolic rate, thermic effective feeding, daily activity. So based on that, roughly 35% of those calories would be a little over 1,000 calories?
Yeah.
Or just I think calories.
Yeah.
1,000 calories, which divide that by 9 is the total grams of fat that I would have in a day. All right. So depending on you, if we want to go into details on how much you should be eating, we'll have a different conversation, like a more one-on-one conversation. We go into details about that.
Yeah, but yeah, knowing that like maybe cook your all your food in like olive oil, or add chia seeds to a smoothie, and some MCT oils are really good, healthy fat. So just adding in a little bit here and there. Fat actually has the most concentrated amount of calories. It's how many? 9 calories per gram. And so it's a little bit more concentrated calories, so it's not going to be very hard to make up that 30% of calories in fat. So it's just adding a little bit here, and then notice if it's like too much, like if you feel like kind of like heavy, like it's sitting in your stomach, that's a sign that it's a little bit too much fat. If you feel great, like you have like good energy and you feel like you're like, energy is a big indicator of hormones, because if you have like a good steady energy level throughout the day, it typically means you have good balanced hormone levels. So just keep an eye on biofeedback like that, and if you're feeling good, maintain that level of fat.
Make sense so far? Perfect. So now we can move into the actual execution of a specific diet, or what the goal is, all right? There's only 3 things, no matter the health goal, there's 3 ways you can go. They're either aesthetics, performance, and longevity, all right? I apologize for my doctor handwriting, but it's okay. So I want you to remember, I get a lot of, I want to shed body fat, but I also want to be incredibly strong. So I want you to understand that the closer you move to one of these, the further you get from another one, okay? So if it's typically, you can have all 3, but just not all at the same time. But when someone comes to me and they want to start shedding body fat, usually start in a longevity and performance phase, start improving their hormone levels to help them start feeling better, to notice that how, like Missy said, you don't notice how bad you feel until you start feeling good. So that's where we usually start, is longevity, and that's in the recovery phase. And then we start going to the execution phase. So let's say it was an aesthetic goal, right? You want to shed body fat, you want to lose weight. So in this phase, it's usually the shortest phase, because in this, we've gotten all the daily habits underway, your step counts, your water intake, your sleep is all in order. So now it's just about execution of either a caloric surplus or a caloric deficit, all right? And this is where you don't go so extreme and cut out carbs, right? You start at a very low caloric deficit. So a lot of times when you're rebuilding your metabolism, say you're eating 1,200 calories because you're scared of the weight, the scale going up. We get you eating up to your actual maintenance, which is 2,500 calories. You start seeing, oh my God, I'm not gaining any weight, right? That's the power of rebuilding your metabolism the right way. So when we actually go into a deficit, you're eating 22 or 2,000 to 2,200 calories. And that's a lot more food than 1,200. So hunger isn't as crazy. There's still going to be a little bit of hunger, but now your body is working more with you.
Hunger's a good sign.
Hunger is actually a really good sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's showing that your metabolism is
Yeah.
slow.
So I've started to notice on the last 50 days I've tried to really dial in my macros, been able to lose some weight, and I'm noticing I'm actually hungrier now than I started.
Mm-hmm.
How do you battle that? How do you have to make adjustments to your macronutrients, or should you stay on track?
I would. So how much protein are you eating?
175 grams roughly.
Is that how much you weigh?
I weigh 168 right now.
Okay, so I would keep your protein there. That should help.
Okay.
But how much are you training?
7 days a week.
Okay, well,
There it is.
there.
Couple times a day.
Yeah, there
Okay,
it is.
so you're trying to lose weight and you're training 7 days a week.
So right now, I'm actually really happy with the number on the scale.
Nice.
My goal now is just to lose body fat while maintaining what I've got.
Okay.
Muscle-wise, yeah.
Okay, so are you scared because you're hungry you're going to go back up on the scale?
I'm not like starving, and I'm not too scared to go up. I'm okay with going up a couple more pounds. Mine's just like I don't want to go back into that habit of like, oh, I can have a little more. Oh, I can
Yeah.
keep having a little more and keep having a little more.
Okay,
And it's just more or less finding a happy balance.
nice. So what's your total calorie intake right now?
2,200 roughly, which is so. I started to wear a Whoop, and like it tells me caloric burn pretty accurately is what they say.
Yeah.
On my really heavy training days, I'm pushing like 4,200 calorie burn, and I'm only eating 22, so that 2,000 caloric deficit definitely is kicking the butt. I just don't know how to play around with the macros and the calories enough to feel confident that like, okay, I deserve to eat a little more.
For sure.
Okay, that's a very good question. Thank you.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to unpack. So now the goal is aesthetic, right? You lost the weight, now you want to shed body fat, have a little bit more muscle tone. So with you overtraining 7 days a week, multiple times a day, that stress response we were talking about, your body is going to hold on to body fat a little bit more because of how stressed you are and how low your caloric intake is. So this is where we would take you into a bit of a recovery phase,
Like a short one.
just metabolic refeed because your body has adapted. You said 50 days to eating at this number?
And like 47 days of 2,200 calories.
Okay.
175 grams of protein.
Okay, so I would keep protein the same.
Okay.
Do not adjust protein because you don't need that much. It's anywhere between 0.7 grams per pound of body weight to 1.3 grams per pound of body weight for protein intake. So I would slowly increase. I would reduce training, like down to four days a week. I know that's crazy. Like your body's like so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, 75 hard. Oh, yeah, that's why. Okay, all right, yeah. Okay. So
He did that.
yeah, I love 75 hard. It's the issue I have with it is like the 2 workouts a day make people think that they have to like crush it every single day.
Yeah. Unfortunately, like chatting with Misty and Todd,
Yeah.
they really pushed us to do like you don't have to go kill yourself.
Good. That's awesome.
There's a couple days where I got a little overpacked, but for the most part we have a recovery day, so like maybe once or twice a week we'll do it's like your 45-minute walk or light jog,
Yeah.
and then maybe yoga or rollout session type of thing.
Nice.
So is that are you counting that in your 7 days a week of training?
So I would say 4 out of the 7 days, it's twice, so it's 3 workouts a day. Is what happens. It ends up being HIIT workouts, and then I've got Muay Thai, and then I do a walk.
Okay.
And then the other 3 days, it's either roll out and a walk or this.
Okay. We have some conflicting
Yeah.
goals here.
Yeah, my hobbies have now become the large years.
Okay, so body weight is so funny. It's going to fluctuate whether you like it or not. But it's not as like if you gain 10 pounds, I promise you, it's not going to be like 10 pounds of fat right away. Okay, it's going to. So for your specific thing, I would drastically reduce training volume, and the priority is muscle definition. Correct?
Yeah, right now.
Right now. Okay, so that's good. Right now, you can have it all, right? But the closer you move from one, the further you move from another. So if that's the priority, I would stick to strength training right now. Lay off the Muay Thai, lay off the cardio. I know that's hard, right? If you were my client, we'd have a very long conversation about this. But if it's truly that, and if that's truly your priority, you're gonna slowly refeed your metabolism. Because of that caloric expenditure drop, your body's gonna start relaxing a little bit more. So you might gain a little bit of weight by adding 1 to 200 calories back into your diet every week. So you wouldn't immediately go to 4,000 calories, right? You've adapted to 2,200. So I would raise it 1 to 200 calories every week, every 1 to 2 weeks, very slowly. Monitor biofeedback. How's your energy feeling? How's your strength going? How's your body fat looking? And I would track progress, not just the scale. I would take pictures every day, like the 75 Hard makes you do. And I would keep water high, keep protein where it's at. Don't increase protein, just slowly increase carb intake. You're gonna put on a little bit more water weight, but as long as you go that slow path, reduce training, you're gonna start seeing body fat shed, okay? If we want more specifics, we'll talk to you about that later.
Mystery, are we on a time limit at all?
Not personally.
Okay, yeah, 'cause we're almost at the hour, so if
Is
anyone
everyone
needs to-
enjoying this so far? Okay, okay, good. If you were not having fun, then I'd say you guys did. But you're stuck here with me.
I do want to throw one thing out real quick.
Yeah.
So I know that a lot of times, and if you've done 75 for hard, you've heard us talk about it, we talk about it in Boys Lost Boys. When we hear certain things that sound really hard, like when they talk about stress reduction or getting more sleep, very quickly we can shut that out. That's not an option. I have a very high stress job, a very high stress life, or I'm unable to get that sleep. To me, that is your bitch voice talking right away. Don't just say, I can't do this. I'm a big believer of where there's a problem, there's a solution. Start looking for that solution and kind of try. Don't just like shut down the information because you got it in your head. Like, no, that's not going to work. Open your mind and try and come up with better solutions so that way you can implement that. So that way the hard work is actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, limiting
well
beliefs
put.
is really what hampered me for a long time. It hampered you for a very long time. In reality, when we start actually finding that desire to change, the problems that we've had become opportunities to make us better. You know, that's why I love 75 Hard, because it's not a fitness challenge, it's a mindset challenge. You know, but people take it as a fitness challenge to kick the hell out of their body. Which again, everyone to each their own. But that help. What's your name, by the way?
David.
David. That answer your question?
Yeah, it's good. I'll
Awesome.
take your advice starting right now.
Good.
Practice
Yeah.
after.
Relax.
Cool. Is there any other questions before we try to wrap up here?
Well, we still got a couple things to go through.
Yeah, we're just at the hour, so.
Anywho, so when we're actually in the execution phase, right, where we actually want to go chase these performance, aesthetic, or longevity goals, this is where we actually go into maintenance, or we just stay at a maintenance and we just monitor biofeedback, make sure that's getting better. If it's an aesthetic phase, that's where you introduce a caloric deficit, keeping training moderate, protein high, but it's more about daily activity, like walking is super, super important. But if it's a mass gain, like a muscle gain, then we go into a slight surplus for a period of time. So this can last anywhere from 4 to 12 weeks, but you stay there for only 4 to 12 weeks because that's a stress on the body. Whatever you're doing, you're restricting your calories, it's a stress. You're gaining calories, it's a stress. Or eating more calories is stress.
When it comes to being in those caloric surpluses or deficits, do you kind of have a rule of thumb to say I can lose this much % of my body weight every week, or gain to be in that healthy, like, I don't know, kind of saying like, if I'm losing 5 pounds a week, like I'm way under my caloric deficit, I'm losing too much, I'm probably losing muscle mass, or if I'm gaining 5 pounds a week, I'm probably just gaining fat versus muscle mass.
That would be tracking progress outside of your body weight, right? So that'd be taking biofeedback. That would be taking progress photos, measuring your waistline, your body as it's growing and changing. Getting a scale that has a muscle mass like scanner. It's not always 1-to-1, but like an in-body scanner is actually really awesome. I don't know if this gym has one, but using that and tracking like that once a week to know that what you're doing is working or hampering. So this is why tracking is super, super powerful, because you can't fix what you don't track. You know what I mean? And you don't know what's working if you're not tracking the positive changes. You know what I mean? So
True.
I don't want you to think like losing 5 pounds a week is like good or I don't want you to think like or good or bad. You know, everybody's body's going to be different, especially around weight. So if you're stressed more one day, you can gain 3 pounds just from water retention. You know, so there's no like, if you lose a pound a week for 52 weeks, you lose 52 pounds. Like, but then that could be pretty unrealistic for certain people. So just don't put any expectations on like this is how exactly it's going to go, because our body's like, fuck you. I do what I want at my own pace. Well, a lot of the time it could be talking to you and we just haven't been paying attention, right? It's like, oh, you want to lose weight? Well, you haven't taken care of my gut for the last 20 years, so go to hell, you know. So this is very dependent on the goal, the specific goal. It's the shortest phase of it all. But how do we maintain? Go to permanent lifestyle integration. So we take everything we learned here, right? We fix all the issues that we had. And we take those and say, what is realistic for me to stick to? The 80-20 rule is my favorite rule ever. We all know what the 80-20 rule is. 80% of the time, you're eating whole food, nutritious food that's going to help your metabolism, help your body, right? If you've never tracked before, or this is where intuitive tracking kind of comes into, take a traditional dinner plate, half the plate veggies, quarter of the plate protein, quarter of the plate complex carbs. You'll never go wrong. Never go wrong. Then activity, right? It's a lot easier to keep muscle than it is to build it. So where you're working hard in these areas to build muscle or lean muscle tone, or like tone, I hate that word, but a lot of people want to look tone. Maintaining a between a 0.7 gram protein intake per 1 gram of protein intake, super beneficial. So I weigh 215 pounds. I eat anywhere between 185 grams protein to 215 grams protein a day. All right, that's super easy once you rebuild your metabolism to do it. But I'm a bigger person, so I have to eat a lot more. Unfortunately, it's expensive. But this is the things we start to look at. But this is where we understand, like, when we're reducing stress here, we just permanent lifestyle integration is literally taking everything here and just making it who you are. That's really it. So when you go on these you go directly into the execution phase, right? Where you're restricting calories, increasing activity, and you can't sustain that. This is why you have to always restart. This is why you start here and go through these and then you get to stay here. But then the goal can change, right? Once we gain control back of our health, and we understand that, okay, I'm not a slave to the scale, I'm not a slave to my body saying fuck you all the time. Then we can say, okay, I've got my aesthetic goal. Now I want to go into CrossFit. Then you start here. You rebuild. You understand what your body is. All right? Then you start training like a CrossFit athlete. And you understand how much more food you need when your activity is super high. And then you go through the execution phase of getting stronger, getting muscle to be that athlete. And then you become a CrossFit athlete. And then you're more here than you are anywhere else. Misty.
Do you think, say that you have like a large amount of weight, like I've got 50 pounds that I want to lose, so you go through recovery and then you're into execution. Do you think that you should stay in execution for the whole time that you're trying to lose 50 pounds? Do you think there should be a little bit of kind of back and forth?
Good question.
That's a very good question. So, believe it or not, when you're in recovery and you have a good amount of food or a good amount of weight that you want to lose, you can actually lose weight adding food to your diet.
Yeah, it sounds so counterintuitive that eating more is actually going to help you lose weight, but so many people lose weight in the recovery phase because, like we said, in that fire of the metabolism, when you're putting on more logs in the fire and it's getting bigger, you're actually like, you're just able to let go of that body fat a whole lot easier. So it sounds counterintuitive that eat more, lose weight, but that's what a lot of people experience in that first phase.
So then when you go into an actual fat loss phase, you stay there as long as progress continues to show, right? So you're tracking your pictures, you're tracking your waistline and any body measurements, as long as it's still going in a good way and you feel good, right? You feel like this is not miserable, I'm not dying, I'm only getting 2 hours of sleep to do this. Like, as long as that feels good, you can stay in execution for as long as it takes. And a lot of time, because you do that, you're gonna get to your goals a lot faster. But to avoid any metabolic adaptation from like staying at such a low caloric intake, we can kind of swoop back into recovery a little bit for like up to 2 days, maybe even a week of eating at maintenance calories to rebuild your metabolism so that there's no like fire stuck down here and then we lose progress. So you kind of intertwine or you commingle with these for a little while.
Depending on the signs of your body.
Depending, yeah, based on what your body's saying. And then once you're here, again, you just take everything you've learned here and apply. So a lot of times you're eating more calories than you started, but you're not gaining any body fat because you've fixed all your nutritional gaps, you've improved your gut health, you've optimized your hormone production because you've reduced stress and all that. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question, Misty?
Is that where your cheat meals come in? So
They-
if you're doing a cheat meal, that's really going back into recovery because you're going up to the
So yes, technically, right? Because I'm not a big fan of calling it a cheat meal because of the connotation that goes around it, and like kind of going back to what Misty said, the bitch voice and the boss voice, right? When we say, oh yeah, I'm cheating on my diet because I deserve this, right? Then that can lead to, I mean, it's like the same thing when we were little kids and our parents kept saying like, don't touch that, don't touch that, don't touch that, and then you touch it, and then the same thing we kind of build up in our mind.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you feel like you're restricting. So I get to have the chicken, waffles, whipped cream. Oh, delicious. And then you're like, I really enjoyed that. I haven't been touching that for a very long time, you know? So understanding that a cheat meal is okay, right? I like to call them refeeds instead of the cheat meal because you're still everything's a diet, right? When you're paying attention to your nutrition. But the words we use around them is going to ensure that it doesn't develop a bad relationship.
So you could refeed a day or two in
Exactly.
recovery and then go back to
Exactly. This is where calorie cycling comes into play. Understanding your total calorie intake through the week. So you say I would have you refeeding and eating at 2,500 calories. And so we multiply that by 7. And if you wanted to incorporate that 80-20 lifestyle and your maintenance calories is 25, so we lower your calories throughout the week. So you'd be eating 15 and then allowing like Friday, Saturday to be a little bit higher. But because we know what your total calorie expenditure is through the week, you're still in that range, and then you don't gain or lose any weight or add body fat like because of a bad weekend.
You want to be able to enjoy life.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
We had a whole pizza yesterday. It was great. I love it.
Yes.
How do you change the mindset of someone that 2,500 calories terrifies me? How that literally terrifies
Yeah.
me. How do you change somebody's mindset to say that's not bad,
Yeah.
that's okay, and
Good
you're
question.
not gonna gain
Good question.
because that number terrifies me.
So, why does it terrify you?
It's a lot. I can tell you right now, I don't even eat 1,200 calories worth of food
We
daily.
don't eat $1,200.
Oh yeah, I don't even eat that daily.
Okay. So, why is it? Where's that fear coming from?
Because I'm a slave to the scale.
So you're scared the scale's going to go up.
Absolutely.
Why are you scared the scale's going up?
Because I'm eating more.
Okay.
I
eating
think
more.
that I'm eating more, so that's what I'm going.
So what I'm trying to get to is where is the fear of the scale coming from?
Like for a lot of people, it's like, for my best friend, she just said, I'm terrified to go to Waterworld in a bikini right now because I just feel fat. Or, you know, it's just like those little things. It's what the judgments of ourselves and of others, you know?
Yeah, judgment of myself.
Judgment of yourself. So it terrifies you because you feel like you're going to eat more, you're going to get fatter, and you're going to dislike how you look even more, right? So has not eating as much food as your body needs fixed the problem?
No.
So do you feel good in your skin?
No, God,
Do you have good bowel feedback?
no.
Do you sleep well?
Actually, okay.
Okay.
I have a 2-year-old, so that depends on the night.
Yeah, probably not. So if I told you that if I have you eating more, you will feel better than you've ever felt in your entire life, that you'll actually be able to wear a bathing suit confidently, you'll be actually look in the mirror and say, I like myself,
What would I say?
what would you say?
Bullshit.
Exactly. But is what you're currently doing working?
No.
So why not give it a shot doing it this way?
And I think
It's that terror. It's that.
It's not even the 22.
Yeah.
It depends on what you want.
Yeah.
your
Well,
activity. It
I
may
still
not be
get.
the
I
same.
get terror. Anything. I think anything more is gonna be more.
Exactly.
You're not the only one.
And that's why, like, how do you?
How do you switch it?
Yes.
You start listening to your body. So you pay attention to how, like I pointed out, how shitty you feel.
Yeah.
Right? So then we start slowly picking one thing and saying, we're gonna focus on that. So if it's step count, I'm gonna get my steps every single day. Cool, I'm winning, right? I'm not scared of that. That's gonna start rewiring your brain to start being attracted to things that are helping you, as opposed to running away from things that you may think are gonna make you gain weight. So then we start increasing vegetable intake. You know, very slowly, very like vegetables are very low in calorie, so you start slowly increasing calories there. But the whole idea is to start small, one thing at a time, until that becomes a part of your lifestyle. Because most of my clients, I have 37 clients, and 10 of them, late 20s, almost 40, in their 40s, women, horrified, just like you. So I tell them the big thing, like losing weight, feeling good in your own skin. That's where we want to go, but we have to reverse engineer that process, because I can't tell you that it's going to happen like that. We have to work through a lot of that fear, right, and face it, and start doing these daily wins. Something simple. I'm going to increase my protein. For you, I would have you eat 3 meals a day, and that's so terrifying, right? But that would be the only thing we focus on. I would help you understand what foods you want to start eating, so that we can work through this fear. I mean, even if you're eating 1 meal a day, then the goal would be 2 meals a day. And then slowly over time, you start to notice, like, I actually kind of feel a lot better. You know, we wouldn't even touch the damn scale.
Yeah.
And one more thing. The recovery phase is super cool with all the sleep and all the activity and the hormone balancing, but it's really the hard part becomes the emotional work that we go through. And that, like, those 10 clients we haven't touched a weight, we haven't touched a food scale, we don't touch any tracking until we can address that fear. Because that, no matter how many times you think you're in any of these phases, is going to make you start over. I know it's not the exact answer.
Well,
No, it helps. No, it definitely helps. No.
And I just want to give my 2 cents on that, because I was the exact same way. Like, I was all about cutting calories. That's how you lose weight, period. And honestly, like, just being completely honest, that's what's so awesome about like having a coach, is because you have that person to hold you accountable and to work through those emotional roadblocks, not the physical ones. Those are kind of easy to work through. It's working through emotional limiting beliefs that, you know, honestly, he's been coaching me as husband and wife, and it's made a huge difference in my like whole transformation, because I can tell him like my fears, and I can be like, I don't want to do this, I'm so afraid, and having someone there to push you to do it anyway, that you wouldn't normally do it on your own, and that's what is the power of having that help along the way too. So just in my experience.
And just piggybacking off of that as well, it is like, I would like to think that you trust that your best interest is, you know, have my heart and faith.
Oh,
in that.
absolutely.
So it's really just trusting more or less the professionals. Like, they're not going to get up there and tell you to do all this food because they want you to go the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And if you look at like your fittest people in life, it is always surprising when you hear how much they do.
Yeah.
So kind of trusting, like, we're saying that for a reason. But it is hard because we are programmed, like when we talk about like fad diets and gimmicks and all of that, like we are programmed to think that you eat such a small amount and you stay away from carbs.
Yeah.
So it is almost a rewiring of the brain, but I'd say, you know, when you hear like trust the process, trust your coaches, trust the people that really know what they're talking about. And like you said, if what you're doing hasn't been working, why not at least just give it a shot? But you sometimes have to have that reality check and kind of call yourself on it when you're trying to limit yourself. You're like, you know what, no, I'm just gonna go ahead and give this a shot and try it. And just like Jonah said, even if it's just starting small and focusing on one thing at a time, and then slowly.
Yeah, for sure.
Really, the whole process, I'm sorry, I'll get to your question. The whole process of actually losing weight, losing fat, the process is super simple, super easy to do, right? Just commit to something every single day. The hard part is addressing the comfort that we built around where we're currently at. And we are inherently lazy beings that are scared of change. We know that feeling miserable is we can live on that. The idea of changing is in anything. Like we are taking off to live in an RV for the next year. I am horrified. But it's the same with anyone in their fitness, right? If it's scary to do things differently than you've always done them, to be aware of the behaviors that actually gotten you here, but it's also empowering to know that you can change how you see fitness, nutrition, how you see yourself, right? There's always the end goal is super pretty, but it's really the process of getting there is that where we see the most benefits. Understanding this is more psychological than it is physical. What was your question?
Yeah, I just have a question for the recovery stage. So, like, what if tracking your macros and everything like causes you stress?
That's a very good question.
It does with, I'm saying
Like,
most
so do I
people, it
not
does.
do it to like then recover and then in the execution go into. But then,
Yeah, that's a good idea. I hated tracking at first. I refused. I was like, it's tedious. It did cause me more stress. And so, yeah, absolutely start without tracking. Like, it took me a while to warm up to it. And then when I finally did, I checked like once a day and then twice a day. And then I was just hooked after that. And then I was like, oh, wow. Like, you know, data points, you know, like I can understand my food a little bit. But 100%, like, if it's causing more stress, just start like making like those more intuitive decisions, like adding onto your food rather than starting to take away in the recovering phase. Adding a salad, adding vegetables to whatever you're ordering. And then over time, when you start getting used to that, like being like food aware, I say then start incorporating tracking. Do you have any?
Yeah, that's perfect. And think of tracking as climbing Mount Everest. Like if you have a certain body fat goal or a physique goal, like the top of Mount Everest is tracking macros to a T. You've got it down. I don't think there's any other way of like truly achieving an aesthetic goal that's like we want. But there's certain areas that we can make base camp before we get to tracking, right? So that analogy I said about the dinner plate, where half the plate's vegetables, quarter of the plate's protein, quarter of the plate's complex carb, like that's a form of tracking, you know? And the more you can stick to that and like pay attention to how those foods make you feel, then you're like, okay, cool, I'm feeling really good, like body weight staying the same and I added food, like maybe I want to start understanding how many calories are in each of these meals, you know? And then you start to build that awareness, right? And then you start practicing, okay, I'll track one meal today. Or you start, I'll track one meal this week. And you do that once a week for a long time. Then you're like, that's a habit, that's easy. One a day. Exactly. But if it causes stress, like I was the reverse. Once I learned about tracking, I was dialed in. I was loving it. I was like, holy
so
shit. Like,
tedious,
if there was a piece of rice that fell off my plate, I would grab it and throw it back on and weigh it. And it was I was very compulsive about it.
yeah.
And this was going into our wedding last year. God, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Anyway, no, that was last year. So anyway, I did that for 6 months, like to a T, measured, weighed every single thing I put in my body. We go on our honeymoon, and I don't feel comfortable eating anything that I wasn't weighing for tracking. So then that caused more stress on me when I was supposed to enjoy my honeymoon.
Yeah.
You know, since then I haven't touched tracking because of how much stress it gave me. But then I chose to follow that framework, right? Protein, complex carb, and veggie on every single meal. So I'm now intuitively tracking. And if I do want to go back on the execution phase, I can easily pick it back up. But it's not the end all be all, right? You learn, you adapt, and then you adjust to lifestyle integration, right? Tracking is not super necessary for everything.
Yeah.
But understanding your food, understanding yourself, and in relationship to your food is what is more important in this whole process.
Question. So on the in-body scans that we get here, on the upper right corner, it says your calories that you need to eat to maintain or something like that? Yeah. So how do you go from that to knowing to create a deficit? I mean, that's just to survive, basically, right?
So is it talking about the basal metabolic rate or yeah?
Yeah, that's
Okay, so if you sat in that chair or any of these chairs all day long, how many calories do you think you would burn in a day?
You'd not burn some.
Huh?
You'd burn some, right?
Yeah. Just a little bit, you think?
Yeah. Versus what else, right? It's like
Yeah.
14, 15, 1600.
Yeah, most people don't realize you burn
base-
the most amount of calories just by being alive.
Exactly. So that's your basal metabolic rate. That's the lowest amount. So if you didn't move all day, that's the amount of calories you would burn. So there's multiple ways we burn calories other than exercise, right? NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, is any movement that is done without the intention of burning calories. So walking, doing yard work,
Cleaning
standing
the
around,
house.
cleaning the house, that's burning calories. Exercise activity thermogenesis, EAT, is exercise with intent to burn calories, which only accounts for less than 20% of your total caloric burn in a day, unless you're working out 3 times a week, or 3 days a week, or 3 times a day. Excuse me. And then the thermic effect of feeding, which goes into which is how many calories are burned digesting food. And carbs and fat have very low thermic effects, so they don't burn very many calories at all. Where protein has a high thermic effect. So if you ever eaten a lot of protein in one meal and you start sweating, you're feeling the effects of the thermic effect of feeding. Your body's burning calories to store that. So for every 100 calories of protein you eat, you're burning 20 to 30 of those calories just to digest it. So that goes into your total calorie burn in a day. So when you understand your basal metabolic rate, that's the bare minimum calories your body needs to survive, just for digestion, brain function, blood pumping. Then you factor in all those other things on how many and you estimate how many calories you burn in a day. So for me, my BMR is 2,000 calories, and then factor in all those other things, eat, TEF, and NEAT. I burn 3,000 calories. So that's my maintenance. If I were to eat 3,000, I wouldn't gain or lose any weight. Then that's where you decide if you want to go into a surplus or a deficit. Does that make sense? So it's
But how do you know how much deficit to go without?
very, very small, very small. So before you go, once you understand how many calories you're estimated to burn, then you start very slow, like 100-200 calorie deficit. Make sure your body's okay at that, and then you track your progress with the in-body scan. Is muscle mass, is body fat decreasing? This is where the in-body scan is super powerful, because you can see if what you're doing is working or not. So then you see progress is going well, like I've lost a pound after 2 weeks, but body fat percentage has gone down 2%. Awesome. I can drop another 100 calories to see how that keeps going. All right, and it's all intuitive. Not intuitive. It's based off how you feel. Okay. So, yes.
So does it matter if you're doing boot camps or weightlifting?
Depends.
Depends.
That's my ultimate answer. It depends.
It depends.
So, what's your goal?
Muscle.
Want to build more muscle. So I would push you more towards strength training.
Yeah.
Because that's sending a powerful signal to build muscle on your body. For boot camp, I actually, her aunt has been to Misty's boot camp, where I had this negative association with boot camps, because I assume it's just burpees and a lot of CrossFit style stuff.
It is.
Yeah.
We don't need to talk about it.
Oh goodness, I'm so sorry. But those signals aren't always muscle building signals. We're lifting weights, and going back to those hunter-gatherer times, it's a replacement for when we used to carry tools, weapons, food, rocks, and we needed to adapt to build muscle and strength. So you won't burn as many calories lifting weights, but calorie burn is not always the point of exercise. It's the intent we're trying to do. So if your intent is to start building muscle, I would strength train and make that the focus. Like, not cutting off Misty forever, but like if you can have everything, but not all at once, Does that make sense? Does that help? So I know this is a lot of information, and I should have started this, but I'm going to throw a quick offer out. Me and Hannah, our coaching program is all online, so we kind of take you through all these processes, and with working with Misty, I would love to be a part of your nutrition even more. So we have 6 spots open for our program. If this is something you would like to talk about more in depth, building a nutrition protocol that helps enhance everything that Misty's doing to start seeing your results, we would love to have you on board, so we can take you through this, start teaching you how to go through understanding your calorie burn, what your body needs, and then rebuilding.
Just take you through this whole thing.
Exactly. So this is the big macro view, but our program tells you exactly how to do it for yourself. So if you're interested in that,
Come talk to us.
just keep talking to us. Yeah. Misty, is that okay if I say that?
Good.
Okay.
All right.
Small shameless plug.
Well, thank you all so much for coming to and spending your morning here with us. I gave out his card. If anyone didn't get it, come up and see me. I'll give it out. And I also gave out the gift card for You're a free $10 off from My Fit Foods, a really awesome meal prep company. So if you didn't get that either, come see me. But yeah, thank you all so much. You have an awesome coach back there. Misty's always looking out for you guys and just always wanted to provide the best experience for you guys. So shout out to Misty. Yeah, they're talking for you. And thank you all too. Have a great rest of your Saturday, guys.
Thank you guys.